Should you wait for someone else to change? Now, I realize that this topic is a bit controversial. I thought about my own life as well as stories that I've heard from friends, from clients, and I think this is kind of like one of those age-old topics where maybe there's not really a clear answer, and it's part as fundamental as living life itself. Now, everybody wants to see someone redeem themselves. Everyone wants to see somebody else change and grow. They want to see other people evolve. So when you're waiting on someone else to change, there's something addictive about that. There's something that pulls you in because there's something fundamental about the human experience that is watching other people change and grow, watching ourselves change and grow. So we're very drawn to that. If there is a story that is just static, it's not moving, no character development whatsoever, this is going to be pretty boring, right? Who's going to watch a movie where the character remains the same throughout the movie? So essentially, this is something that's going to grab people. And what we're trying to do here is we know that we're going to be pulled in by hoping that someone will change. But what we want is we don't want to get sucked into our own detriment. And that is what this video is going to explore. Everyone is on their own timeline. So some time ago, I had a friend, and I had given my friend a bunch of unsolicited advice. I really got in his face saying, you need to do this and you need to do that. Unsurprisingly, my friend did not respond very well to this, and he basically told me to go away. And after that moment, we did not talk. I think it was something like 5 years. So to my absolute surprise, one day my friend, he attended a kind of a mastermind class, and they told him, hey, you need to call someone that you are afraid to call. And that person that he called was me. So I pick up the phone, and he essentially said to me, hey, I know what you said to me all those years ago, and I wasn't really ready to process it at the time. And, now I've grown and changed in some way, and I felt that it was right to call you. Now, what my friend didn't know is he actually kind of did two things. He did something for himself because he was internalizing some important truths, and, a lot of respect for that. But the second thing is, I didn't really know that this is possible. I didn't know that something you say to someone, that they could still be thinking about it 5 years later. And there was actually some other examples in my life where maybe I told someone something and they were thinking about it 10 years later. So I think that was pretty surprising, and it showed me that everyone's on their own timeline. Something that you might think about right now might be something that someone is thinking about for a longer period of time, depending on what's going on in their life and what kind of person they are. So I don't know if you've ever seen someone jogging, right? So you see someone jogging, they're running, they might seem very, very tired. And to you, you're just walking down the street. You're like, why is this person so tired? But what really matters, what makes a difference, is how long has this person been running before you saw them? Now, if they've only been running for 5 minutes, well, probably they shouldn't be so tired and sweaty, right? But for all you know, they might have just run 26 kilometers. They might have run an entire marathon before they encountered you. And when that comes to life, maybe you encounter someone who's dealing with a self-esteem issue, and maybe they're just starting out on that journey, right? Maybe this is kind of the first time that they're really thinking about it. Or maybe this is something that they've been dealing with their whole life. Maybe there's been lots of different episodes that brought it up in different ways. So if you think about, let's say like the race of life, everyone is starting out at a different point. Not everyone is going to start at the same zero. Some people are starting negative 25. Some people are starting positive 25. Some people have been working at a problem longer than other people. Some people have been working at a problem shorter than other people. So then when you show up and you're like, well, you have to change at this moment when I said. How are you going to say that? Because you don't have the full picture. You don't know what kind of person they are to begin with, and you also don't know how long they've been dealing with this particular issue. So before you can really get into suggesting what they need to do or what recommendations that you have for this person or how much patience you should have for this person, you really need to kind of take a step back, get the complete picture of who this person is and what their timeline, what their experience, what their stories are related to this issue. The trap of waiting for someone to change. Now, if you think about any situation in which you wanted someone to change, it's very likely that you were highly invested in this person. You wouldn't care about a random stranger whether or not they were willing to change. You probably only got this thought when you were already involved with someone. And quite often, that type of involvement tends to be romantic. I mean, it could also be professional, it could be family or friends, but most of the time it's romantic. And now you're highly invested in whether this person is going to change. And that can create a lot of pressure on the other person because they are who they are. They were who they were before they met you. And now you come along and, the outcome of what happens to them is so connected to how you feel. So now you're kind of unconsciously applying all this pressure on this person because of your level of investment. And this can kind of create a type of feedback loop where it makes it very difficult for you to be objective with this person. And maybe what they need is maybe not someone applying so much pressure. Maybe what they need is someone who's willing to listen. And if you think about the context of any kind of romance, that automatically creates pressure. The more feelings involved, the more pressure. And something that's pretty interesting about hoping that someone will change, usually what happens is it's not that you're looking for this person to completely 100% change. It will probably be something like, well, they have 9 things, but it's really that 10th thing that is causing the issue. It's that 10th thing, if they could just fix that one small thing, well, everything would be okay. But it's pretty funny because usually what ends up happening is that one small thing, it's not a small thing. It might seem like a small thing, but it's actually indicative of something deeper, much larger, right? So it's kind of this illusion that's coming to you. The illusion that, they just need to change that small thing, and therefore, if they change the small thing, everything's going to be okay. But it's actually going to take a lot more work or a lot more time to make that change. And the other thing that we need to be concerned with is, this person may or may not be able to change the thing at hand. It might seem like a small thing. It might seem easy for you. It might seem easy for you because maybe you're already that way, or maybe you've kind of put it into the intellectual framing. But maybe that thing that is easy for you could be very difficult for them. Now, I know for myself, maybe I have some personality quirks that I see other people they don't have that problem. But for me, it could be a lot of work, even though it might seem like a small thing for them. So the trap here is you are already invested by the time you're hoping that someone would change. And as you continue with this person, become more invested, and you end up doing this cycle of pressure. And that's probably not something that's going to lead to a positive outcome. Moral superiority is a slippery slope. So there's this idea of when you're trying to help someone, when you have this idea of a way that someone in your life could change and change their life for the better, you might get into this idea that you know what's best. That if they could just kind of listen to what you're saying, that their life would be better, that your life would be better, that just all around, that actually the blocker here is why can't they just listen? Why can't they just get it? But the thing about life is that it's very non-linear. We might think of, okay, well, we just want to keep improving. We just want to keep getting better all the time. And all those periods in life where you're kind of at rock bottom, or maybe you went in the wrong direction, maybe there was a couple of years in your life that were quote unquote a waste. We might look at those and say, well, we should have avoided all that. We should have just kind of went straight to the goal. And a lot of times when you're trying to tell someone how they can improve, you're going to be doing it in a kind of linear, get to the goal kind of way. Whereas a lot of those times in life where you're struggling or where you're kind of going in a circle or where maybe you've even been lost, this is part of the process. And if you go in and say, well, just skip the process, just change right now in this, I've already figured this out for you. Why are you going in this long roundabout way to get there? The thing is, for them, like, that's what they need to do. And it's you can kind of get into this habit, this pattern of, well, I'm standing above them. Or maybe you don't really say like, hey, I'm standing above you and I'm so superior. You're not really like saying that, but it's the way you're saying it. It's the way that you kind of come across as like, you know what to do, and therefore this person needs a change. And there's a lot of great stories where someone was dealing with some kind of internal conflict, maybe for their entire life. And at some point, maybe they turned that into great art, or maybe that's really what their life was about, was to try and resolve this inner conflict. And then if you come along and start saying, well, you got to change, you got to fix that, you got to make it more clean and reconcile better, then the problem becomes you've kind of taken away the arc of their life. So when you're trying to help someone, or when you're hoping that someone change, or trying to provide your recommendation, you have to remember that that's what it is. It's a recommendation. And people could take your recommendation. Maybe they'll take your recommendation and it'll turn out for the better, and everyone is better off because this was a great recommendation and it met them at the time that they were ready to receive it. Or maybe you give them a recommendation and they completely ignore it. And as someone who spends a lot of time trying to help people, I can tell you a lot of times I will give someone the recommendation and they just completely ignore it. But I still give the recommendation. But not to get too spiritual about it, I think when you're going to provide that recommendation, you're providing your knowledge, you're providing your awareness, maybe you're providing your talents, but at the end of the day, the only real entity, the only real person, whichever you want to call it, that knows what is correct is going to be God, is going to be the universe. And you always have to be humbled by that and know that there's no way that you can know 100% what is the right thing for this person. Love with acceptance and patience. So before you can come up with a solution for any given problem, you first need to listen. And if you are not listening to this person, you might not ever understand what's really going on with them. And listening is not something that you do in like a day. I mean, it can take an entire lifetime listening to someone to really understand what's going on with them. So you can never really listen too much. But in order to listen that much, you're gonna need a lot of patience. And because if you don't have the patience, you're kind of jumping ahead to the solution. Now, I know a couple of people, like if I call them, they're just like, you need to do this. And maybe, I'm not sure, maybe they're right. I often get the feeling that they're kind of doing it too fast. They haven't really heard the full story yet before they kind of chime in with their opinion. And the only way that you're going to be able to fully listen is to first have patience. And patience is very tricky. There's so many things to think about when it comes to patience. And there's that other video, it's called The Hardest Thing to Do Is Nothing. And part of that is to not react. Someone's telling you something, maybe it's upsetting you. They're telling you something and it's upsetting you. Instead of reacting and saying, you've told me something that upsets me, therefore I'm going to react with something that is going to tell you to do that less, just sit there and hear the complete story. And then the second part of this is the love part. And in order to love someone, you need to love them, like you need to care about them, but at the same time, you kind of need to be not attached. So there's many kinds of love. One kind of love could be that very attached, you could say possessive type of love that you might see in romance. But another kind of love is a spiritual love, and that's kind of unconditional, giving the love to whoever it is, no matter where they are in their life and what's going on with them, and what their relationship to you is. So in order to give the unconditional love, it requires something in you, not in them, because you need to be in an internal state where you can just give. And if you've ever tried to give too much, it could be quite draining. And it's hard to find that place within yourself. So you need to take the time to charge yourself first before you go and try and help someone else. Because if you run out of that energy, well, you're not really going to be able to approach them with the love, with the love and the patience. And who knows, maybe this person will change in a day or a week, or maybe it takes them an entire lifetime. And that's why before you even get engaged in this type of situation, you have to the prerequisite is to approach with love and patience. How do you know if someone is going to change? Usually when people change, it's rarely through some kind of breakthrough event where they just woke up one day and they had a massive change, or they had a massive shift in identity. I mean, surely that could happen. There are many stories about that. But usually it's kind of this gradual process where they're kind of learning something over here and they're learning something over there. They're having experiences that are shaping them. They're talking to people. They might have read something. And usually at some point, they start putting the pieces together. So if you're trying to understand if somebody is going to change, really what you need to focus on is you kind of need to look for the indicators. Rather than looking for the outright change, what you're looking for is something more like a trajectory. You're looking for how are they changing over time, from day to day, from week to week. And if you see the person kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again, well, maybe either the trajectory it's stuck, or maybe it'll just get stuck there forever, which is leads to my next point, which is to say, so you're trying to observe the trajectory, the statistical probability by putting together the different pieces, because it's not binary. It's not like they were this one day and they were this the other day. It's kind of this accumulation of small things coming together. Now, but the way that you should respond to this is you need to kind of set yourself a date. How long are you willing to wait? And do that up front. So if you only kind of want to deal with this for a month, then write that down and say, I'm only willing to deal with this for a month, or maybe you're willing to deal with it for a couple of months, or maybe maybe you're willing to try one more year. But what happens is if you don't do that, if you just go along with it, then you kind of fall out of bounds. You can kind of get stuck in it and spiral every day, thinking that there's no end to this, not being able to extract yourself from the situation. So if you set the date up front, then you know that you kind of reached your own personal limit that you've given yourself. And so when you're observing this, you're looking to see, is this person, is a trajectory, has it shifted by the time that you've reached kind of your own personal limit that you've set for yourself? So should you wait for someone to change? Well, the answer is it depends. And it depends on a number of different factors. So when it comes to your side, you have to ask yourself do you have the energy, do you have the patience, do you have the love that you're willing to approach this situation in a way that's going to be effective? And then on their side, you have to be able to observe what are the indicators. Are these indicators building up, or is it just kind of the same thing in a loop? And it's really going to depend also on how much do you care? How invested are you in this situation? And there's kind of a paradox there. So if you're invested, you want to give this. It's worth giving it a fair shot if you're really invested. If you walk away too quickly, you might regret. You might say, well, maybe I should have gave them a chance. But the paradox is, if you're too invested, well, you just might wait way too long, and you might end up giving up a good chunk of your life, and you might regret that. So to know if you should wait for someone to change, it's kind of a process. You're operating this process daily, and then you are going back and reflecting and saying, is this moving in the right direction? Have I given this sufficient amount of energy? And does it look like this is something that could turn out in a good way? And that's all I got to say on this topic. I'll see you guys in the next video.